Next. Okay, so now I'm going to cover what a cover letter is. So obviously the cover letter is your motivation or your justification. So think about it as a letter that you're writing to the recruiter to explain to them why you are the perfect fit for them. You know, I used to like to use analogy at UP that it's almost like writing a love letter with obviously not the love part, but explaining to them just how great you are, just how great their organization is and how their values and your values are kind of matched, etc. So it's obviously just the motivation or justification of why you are a suitable candidate. Okay. So it's obviously that first opportunity that you have to introduce yourself to the recruiter. So the same things that you would have considered in your CV, like your grammar, like your spelling, like your structure, these things are also very important in your cover letter. If you write your cover letter and the words don't make sense, the way you've written it doesn't make sense, or you overly repeat yourself, etc., those are the type of things that are going to put off a recruiter. Okay, so obviously this is where you present your qualifications. You might not necessarily want to say which university you got your qualification from, because that's stuff that's going to come up in your CV as well. So it's actually high level information of what's going to be in your CV. Okay. And then obviously that's where you try and show your person job fit. So if the role requires you to have interpersonal skills or leadership skills, or be self-starter or self-motivated, etc., those are the type of things that you'll put in your cover letter as justification or motivation of why you are suitable. Okay. And then obviously you need to consider the application instructions. The length is usually to the point, so you don't want it to be anything longer than a page. You might want to have just 3 or 4 paragraphs. You don't want to have too much information, because that information is going to be covered in your CV. This is just kind of an introduction that you're making to the recruiter. Okay, so if they expect you to, if the application instructions specifically tell you write 3 paragraphs or speak about this or speak about that, make sure that you are focusing on what they're saying that you must focus on. Okay. And then obviously you'll tell them that your CV is going to be attached. And then obviously link it to the job description. Are they looking for leadership skills? Are they looking for interpersonal skills? Are they looking for someone that's a self-starter, etc., etc.? You need to make sure that you are fitting it with a job description, and then obviously highlight your qualifications as well, as I mentioned earlier on. And then consider the company person fit. In order for you to do this, you need to have done a little bit of research about the organization. You need to have looked at the role spec, looked at yourself, and then determined, how would I fit into this particular role? An example would be, say you wanting to become a teacher or an educator. What are the different things that an educator needs to have in order for them to be successful in that role? You need to be able to have listening skills. You need to be able to transfer knowledge. You need to be able to engage people. You need to be able to work with different people from different backgrounds. Those are the type of things that you'd want to highlight in your cover letter when you're selling yourself. And as I mentioned, you make sure that you research the company so that you can see that there is going to be a fit between the company's values and your values, as well as the role that you're applying for. Okay. And then obviously other things to consider: sentence structure. Avoid using abbreviations and jargons. A lot of the times, especially if it's a technical role, the person that's actually viewing your CV is a human resources personnel. They may not necessarily understand that abbreviation or that jargon that you're using. So as far as possible, use full words and avoid using jargons that may confuse whoever is going to be writing it. And then obviously have a logical flow of ideas. Don't be very confused about what you're writing. 1 minute you're talking about this, next minute you're talking about that. Make sure that your structure kind of flows. So have like an introduction where you're kind of introducing yourself, and then the next section is you're highlighting how you are suitable for the role. The next section, maybe you're talking about the values of the organization, why you want to particularly work for that organization, and then your closing paragraph is how can they get in touch with you, where can they contact you, when are you available for an interview, those type of things. Okay. And then obviously the structure itself, at the top, you'll have the address of the recruiter if you do have it. And then the application recipient, you'll say, dear sir or madam, if you don't know the person's name. If you know the person's name already, even perfect, put down their name. Have a subject line, so re-application for you know, an internship or a graduate program, or etc., etc. And then, like I said, have between 3 and 4 paragraphs. A lot of the times 3 paragraphs is more than enough, but if you have that much to write, you can make it 4 paragraphs. Okay, and then the content would obviously, the part 1, which is your first paragraph, is going to be the introduction. So who you are, what you want, how did you hear about the position. So if you met a person at a career fair, as an example, or you met them via LinkedIn, or you saw the position online, or you saw it on a website, those type of things, this is where you will tell them where did you find out about the position. Section or paragraph 2 or 3, this is where you motivate. So you consider the job description. So what does the job entail? Why are you suitable for this particular position? Why do you want to work for the organization? And then highlight that person job fit as well as person organizational fit. And like I said, paragraph 3 or 4, you close. So you take next steps and next action steps. So how can they contact you? When are you available for interviews? You know, things like that. Okay, so the next section is just to kind of give you an overview of the type of places where you can look for jobs. There are a lot of places you can look for work. You can network. You can speak to friends and family. You can speak to people at church if you're a church goer. You can, you know, there's a lot of ways to look for work. But if you're going to do kind of an online search, specifically because we are now stuck with COVID and we are now using, you know, internet facilities a lot of the times, Careers 24 is a good place to look for. Career Junction as well. Glassdoor, Grad Connection. Grad Connection, actually, they normally give copies to each university every year. But if you can't find a copy, you can always go online. There's Indeed, there's Leaply, there's Pnet, there's LinkedIn, and there's a lot of other ones. One thing for sure I'd like to tell you guys is you need to always verify the website that you're using. Make sure that you're checking that the role is legit. You know, if you see an address and it looks funny to you, you know, go into Google Maps and search it and see if it's not in a dodgy area, as an example. I've had people say that they applied for roles and they got there and the buildings were empty, as an example, and maybe it was a syndicate, maybe they were trying to abduct people. So you obviously still need to be careful and make sure that you're cognizant of the fact that we are living in a relatively, you know, not 100% safe world. So you also need to take the steps to protect yourself. There are other areas like going through recruitment agencies. If you are the kind of person that believes that a recruitment agency could work for you, that's also another route that you can take. But like I said, if you're going to use a recruitment agency and they're telling you to come to their offices, etc., make sure that it's, you know, a reputable agency. And if they can't, for example, do a Zoom meeting or a Teams meeting, you know, or a Skype meeting, question those type of things, because we are living in a digital world. Why are they not able to meet with you, you know, over, you know, such mediums as well? So that's just something that I'd give as a tip to look out for. Okay, and then obviously you need to make considerations of the kind of jobs that you want. You need to look at your qualifications. So, you know, do your qualifications allow for you to have that particular role or to apply for that particular role, or are you just taking chances? What are your interests? You know, what are you interested in? Are you interested in working alone in a lab, or do you want to work with people, or do you want to work with animals if you want to, you know, go into a zoology and that type of thing? Also, obviously, look at the location. Is it going to be accessible to you? If you don't have a car and you know you need to use public transport, you don't want to be applying for a job that needs you to catch 3, 4, 5 taxis before you get to work. So think about those type of things as well. What are the job requirements, you know, and other factors like what is the culture of the organization? What are the working hours? What are your career aspirations? So if you know long-term a company like ABSA or a company like Investec or KPMG or, you know, those type of organizations, you know that the organizations that are continuously going to grow. So do you want to start at the bottom and then work your way up, or do you already want to kind of be in a position where you know this is what I want to do and I want to master this particular position and grow in it long term? So what are your career aspirations? And based on that, that'll kind of help you to decide what kind of jobs you should look for. I know the unemployment rate is high in South Africa. I'm not saying that it's not a factor that one should consider, that if an opportunity does come that we should take it. But ultimately, you still want to be happy. You don't want to be in a role where you feel it's a dead end and that you just get up in the morning just for a paycheck. You want to be able to add value, because the kind of people that add value are the kind of people that get promotions, they get other opportunities elsewhere. Okay. And then my last section is the interview preparation. I see time's running out, so I'll go a little bit quickly on this one, but it is quite important. when you're preparing for an interview, so great, you've written a perfect CV, your cover letter was great, you've applied and they've said, listen, we want to call you in for an interview, let's meet next week. The things that you need to start considering when you hear that is knowing yourself. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? The reason you need to know your strength is you need to be able to compare yourself to the role that you're applying for. What are your strengths in relation to this particular role? How are you going to sell those strengths in relation to this particular role to highlight to them that you're a suitable candidate? Also, if you're going to have like a shopping list of strengths and they were to ask you, can you give us an example of a time when you demonstrated that? Be able to back it up. So I know a lot of people, when they have, preparation for interview, they'll be like, oh, I'm a hard worker, I'm a self-starter, I love working with people, I'm independent thinking. Great, you've listed all these beautiful things. Give me an example and you've demonstrated those things. And a lot of people end up having a cricket moment because they have all these great words, but they never actually thought about the times when they actually did demonstrate those particular skills or competencies. So know your strengths and be able to back them up if you were asked to be able to back them up. And then know your weaknesses. Now, the weaknesses question, if they do ever ask you in an interview, is something that you need to be able to answer honestly, but don't answer a weakness that's going to make you not get the job. So say, for example, you're expected to work with people and your weakness is that maybe that you're short-tempered. You're not going to tell the recruiter I'm short-tempered because you're telling him don't hire me. I'm not going to be able to do the work that you expect me to do because I need to be able to work with people. Try and find a weakness that you've identified, that you've worked on, and that you've seen some form of progress with it, so that you are able to show the recruiter that you're someone that actually has been able to do self-introspection, and also that you've done something about it, even if it's not a drastic change that you've seen, but that you've seen some change. I know that a lot of the people that I used to help used to say to me, no, I'm scared of public speaking. But then you're applying for a role that's going to expect you to do presentations all the time. You can't tell the recruiter that that's a weakness of yours, unless you can show him that it was a weakness. I've been working on it and I'm actually improving on it and I'm actually starting to enjoy it. Then it will be a weakness that you can identify. And then obviously know the job. What are the competencies that are expected? What are the skills that are expected? What are the experiences that are expected, so that you can see if there's a person in job fit to that particular role. Also know the company. Do a lot of research, and I mean like research the company. Know what are the different awards that they've had recently, if they've had mergers or if they've had issues. And then obviously have a few of your own questions ready. There's nothing more annoying than interviewing someone and then you ask them, do you have questions, and they say no thank you, I'm fine. Like for me, the interview process is a two-way process. You also need to be able to make a decision. Is this an organization for me? Is this the role that I would like to be, doing long term? So you should have a couple of questions ready. It doesn't have to be a lot, but simple things like, when can I expect to hear from you? Are there any other steps in this process, like psychometric assessments? The last thing you want to do is ask a recruiter, oh, how did I do? Don't ask that question. Like, I'm telling you now, don't ask that question. They're not going to call you back if you ask that question. Okay. And then obviously focus on selling yourself. What are the different things that you know that you're really, really good at, that are going to enable you to do the work, that you're going to help add value in this particular organization? And be honest. I think a lot of the times we try to inflate who we are, or the skills that we have, or our competencies or whatever. Recruiters can see through that. Try as far as possible to be honest. And if they ask you a question that you don't understand, ask them to either repeat or rephrase the question, so that you are given the opportunity to give the best version of yourself. I know that we all get nervous during interviews, and it obviously gets better and easier with time, but try and be calm. If you have any stresses or issues or whatever, you leave those stresses at the door. You can pick them up on your way out if you still really want them. But during that interview, put your best foot forward. Make sure you're selling the best version of yourself. Okay. I mean, obviously I was asked to talk a little about networking, but I see we're running out of time. So I'm going to run through this very quickly. The best ways to do online networking is to go via LinkedIn, find people that are in similar roles that you're interested in, and try to connect with them, ask them questions about their career, how did they get to where they are, just so that you can see what are the different steps that you may need to take in order to get there. Connect with recruiters. There's a lot of online seminars that are happening right now. So find those online seminars that are applicable to your field of interest, connect with the recruiters, ask them regular questions, also link up with them on LinkedIn, and then obviously regularly check the websites of sorry, the organizations that you're interested in, and then check on the recruiter. Check who the recruiter is. Drop them an email. Tell them, listen, I saw this reel. I'm really keen. These are my qualifications. Ask them questions regularly to say, listen, can you possibly put me in your talent pool? Are there opportunities that you can maybe, direct me to in the future? You're not saying that they must apply for you, but maybe they can look out for you and see if they can't help you in the future. And then obviously for me, the most important thing is to be able to have an elevator pitch. If one day you're at a braai or at a family gathering or anything like that, and you get to meet someone that could potentially have an opportunity for you, be able to have an elevator pitch that you can sell yourself in a short, persuasive way to them, so that they can actually think, you know what, I met that one guy at that braai, and actually maybe he's a good person or she's a good person for us to consider. And then these are just the tips that one can consider when you're preparing your elevator pitch. Start with obviously who you are. Write about what you do and how you do it. Explain the results of your work and what makes you unique. So obviously, what is that unique selling proposition that you have? Are you someone that is spontaneous? Do you work well with people? Are you versatile? Are you a hard worker? Those type of things. And then obviously, once you've written it, edit it. And then obviously add a good conversation starter at the beginning. Record your pitch and practice it. Tell a family member, practice it with a family member or a friend, or a fellow alumni, or a classmate, etc. Make sure that you're practicing it until you get to a point where you believe all those things that you're saying, so that it becomes a little bit more believable when you're selling it to somebody else. I got all this information from zesty.com, so you're more than welcome to check out their webpage. They've got a lot of other information that you may want to use from an elevator pitch perspective. And that's my story. Are there any questions?